Alrighty, what's going on everybody? Ninja Star here, and today we are back at it again with our Fullmetal Alchemist video. Now today's Fullmetal Alchemist video, we'll be talking about the fights in FMA. FMA has had some really fun and really cool fights that I want to discuss with you all in this video. Now to kind of clarify, this video will primarily be talking about Brotherhood and the original anime. It's basically a whole franchise series of fights. So from the original anime and from Brotherhood, all fights will be included that I think are the best. And I also want to clarify, I don't really see one-sided beatdowns as fights. That's why you won't see stuff like Mustang versus Envy or Mustang versus Lies, because I don't even want to call those versus. They're more so just Mustang, burning Envy and Lies, if that makes sense. I don't they have a lot of weight to them as moments, but as fights, I don't know about that. So I just want to clarify that before anyone comments. But regardless, I want to get into some honorable mentions first, and then I'll get into my primarily top 5. Armstrongs and Brick Soldiers versus Sloth in Brotherhood. Father versus everyone in Brotherhood. Wrath versus Greeving and Bradley's Home, in Brotherhood. Mustang versus Ed in the original anime. Scar versus the Elrics in Brotherhood, Round 2. Now, starting off my list, we have Sloth versus Ed in the original Fullmetal Alchemist. Sloth versus Ed in the original Fullmetal Alchemist has so much weight to it, and even though I said I wouldn't include stuff like Mustang versus Envy or Mustang versus Lust, this still works as a fight. Like, there is a fair amount of struggle for Ed, not just because, what's going on in his head and having to, keep Alphonse under control, because Ed's a bit more mature about this than Alphonse is. It's also a matter of Sloth is fairly powerful. She's a homunculus after all, and the overall meaning behind this fight, Ed basically have to take on as, someone who is kind of the result of his failed mother transmutation that he and Al created. It was really, really tough to see, because especially towards the end when Ed had to kill her, it was like, those last words from Sloth herself, that was really, really tough. And she knew herself, like she was kind of unclear about her identity to begin with, so it really added to her complexity. And the interruptions between Wrath and Lust, they were really, really something to see and really added more to the emotion. Alphonse was kind of in the middle. He's like, should we do it, should we not? But Ed realized from this moment on, because at this point Ed's fairly developed in the original anime, so he's past the point of mourning and all of that. He knows what he must do for the better to take down the homunculus and Dante. So I think that ended on a really, really strong note. And yeah, that's just it. It was also fairly well choreographed. The strategy behind it's really cool, and I think we're done there. We can now go to number 4. My number 4 is from Brotherhood, and we have Alphonse versus Pride and Kimblee. Now this fight was rather short, but I love it, okay? It isn't just a one-sided beatdown. It's legit a battle between two sides, and one side has kind of given in to what he's, for the longest time, gone against. After Heinkel basically, has to motivate Alphonse, like, hey, use the Philosopher's Stone, because even though there's dead lives in there and all that, it's for the better. You're doing this for the cause, and I'm sure the people in there wouldn't have too much of a problem with it to begin with, so that kind of motivates him. And when we see Alphonse just walking out there, man, badass, I'm telling you, just one of the coolest things ever. That entrance, it's insane, and you can really see Kimblee's getting excited. It really adds to it. And I feel just the way it's executed is really, really nice, because Alphonse is kind of given in at this point. Because before then, we hadn't really seen too much of him. It was mainly Ed where he got his time to shine. Alphonse had his moments, but this is one that really stuck out. That this guy isn't just a sidekick to Ed. Alphonse is his own person, and even in some ways, he's stronger than Ed. And what he does against Pride and Kimblee, the fight is just so brilliantly animated. The fight is so brilliantly thought out, and you think like, oh gosh, he lost his leg. Oh no, he just makes that into a weapon. It's like it's so fast paced that I think it doesn't even feel too short, to be honest. It's a really, really cool encounter and clash that many of us still remember, even after finishing Brotherhood. Next up, we have Greeving versus Bradley in part 5 of Brotherhood. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the original Greeving versus Bradley, the round 1, because I mentioned that I'm honorable mentions, and that fight was cool in, Bradley's Home, primarily because it was really well animated. Greeving versus Bradley round 2, though, is just that is not only well animated, but there's a lot to it. You know, a lot of substance. Not saying the old one didn't, but this one has much more that really sticks out. So after seeing Wrath slash, you know, I'm gonna call him Wrath for the sake of, because homunculus versus homunculus. Wrath just comes out looking like a complete boss, you know, chasing away the tank earlier and all that. And then we see Greeving, you know, just come back kind of for a rematch and see what's this guy up to. So it's homunculus versus homunculus, and not only can you really feel the tension on both sides, we're really rooting for Greeving, but we're kind of worried for him too. We're like, I don't know, Bradley's kind of a boss even in his old age. So then we see interruptions from folks like Fu. And Fu's death is really emotional to see as kind of an intermission between the fight, and we just see Bradley versus, I should say Bradley versus the Shing soldier, the Shing 3, but it's mainly Greeving here because we can see what Greed and Lane kind of their dynamics together, which I think are really interesting. And just the battle overall, it's really, really exciting, keeps you guessing, always like, okay, how's this gonna go, and just hits you when you don't expect it, and there's a lot of strategy to it. So I think it's just a great battle that many remember. The idea of homunculus versus homunculus, it was great, and probably the best one of the series by far. Now, next up, we have another fight from the original anime, like number 5, and this one, I was kind of debating between number 1 and number 2, but I'll give number 1 the number 1 for, well, you'll see in a bit, but let's talk about number 2 for now. Number 2 is Ed versus Greed in the original anime. Ed versus Greed in the original anime, I think, is one of the most underrated anime fights I've ever seen. The Sakuga on this battle, especially towards the last act, is, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful to see. It flows so nicely. And Ed vs. Greed, like the strategy behind it too, just seeing Ed have to outsmart this guy. It isn't just a matter of friendship power-up and all that junk. It actually requires skill. It actually requires strategy. It requires Ed having to really think about this battle and be what he's good at. You know, this intelligence, because Ed, one of the big things about him is his intelligence. He's a very, very smart fighter, so he had to put that to good use in this battle, because Greed's a very powerful opponent whose whole, like, armor thing could be very tough, even for someone with the title Full Metal. So I really like this fight because it's just a cool back and forth. It really keeps you guessing. I was disappointed that this wasn't fleshed out on too much in Brotherhood. I mean, sure, there was that cool clash, but this one, in the original anime, it was really developed upon for Ed versus Greed, and the impact this fight has later words because of Greed's death. Greed's death in Brotherhood was just kind of by Bradley, which is cool. It added more to Bradley's character in the Greed later words, but with this original anime, it didn't have that intention, so it kind of closed off his character arc. Like, you really begin to see Greed wasn't that bad in the end. It shows all these homunculus were really just the result of failed human transmutation, and they were, you know, have some human in them too. They're not entirely monsters as we make them out to be as the series goes on. We see that. So I felt Ed versus Greed was just a great battle to see because it really affected Ed, because up until this point Ed hadn't killed somebody. This is the first time Ed had ever really killed somebody in battle. This is legit. Ed feels kind of sorrowful, you know, he's really lost, and his reaction, like, okay, I know when I defeat bad guys, they're down, right? But then the Greed is actually dead, and Ed really comes to realize that homunculus aren't this bad. So he kind of sympathizes with them, and he also realizes the main objective at hand, and I think this is what made the character of 2003 Ed stand out so much. And from this moment on, he takes death much more seriously than he did before, and he's a lot more careful about his battles, and also learns to be more mature. If Ed hadn't known how to take out somebody, how to kill somebody like this before, at this point, he wouldn't have been able to take out Sloth the way he did, you know, later words. So this fight really had an impact, and I love it so much. My number 1 fight for the best fight in Fullmetal Alchemist is, I think you all predicted this, but I'm going to say it right here, Scar versus Bradley in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Scar vs. Bradley, I think, is unanimously agreed to be the best Fullmetal Alchemist fight, not just in terms of how cool it looks and how interesting of a matchup it is, just the weight of the battle, the theme. Bradley even points out that these are two nameless men who've kind of went on a long journey and don't really know how to find themselves. You know, Bradley / Wrath, he's kind of just been, like kind of forced into this path that he's supposed to take. The only freedom he's ever really had is by choosing his wife. Everything else has kind of been set out for him, whereas Scar has had a really dark past with the whole Ishvalan thing, and he was a man set out for revenge, but he's now beginning to shift. So I think this is a really interesting fight because neither of them have their names. Scar doesn't even acknowledge his real name, he just goes by Scar. Bradley, that was just a name given by the military. He doesn't even know his real like birth name. He just goes by Brath or Bradley. So the fight between these two is really interesting to see, almost poetic, like he said. The choreography is, oh my gosh, it's so appealing to look at, and it's just the way these two fight, their fighting styles are really exciting to see, like kind of put against each other. Scar's whole technique of using semi-alchemy and Bradley's of just using swords primarily. And it's also a matter of Scar giving in, and Bradley even points out, like, hey, you're kind of using alchemy. But, you know, we really begin to see, because Scar is a better character in Brotherhood than he is in 03 because of how much more developed he is. Voice crack, sorry. Because of how much more developed he is, so we really begin to see his true colors here stand out when he goes up against Fear King Bradley. And the way this ends, man, it's like, you know, Bradley dies a peaceful death, but he also kind of dies like in the coolest way possible. It's like Alphonse asks him any last words, and then he's like, none. So it goes to show this man legit embodies that title of Wrath. Wrath isn't always like yelling, screaming, whatever. Wrath is cold. Wrath can be cold, killing, murder, anger, but it doesn't have to be loud. That's the best way to describe Bradley, like a silent killer. Not really silent, but you get what I mean. And the way it goes out is actually fairly peaceful, which is ironic considering his name. Wrath dies a peaceful death. So guys, that's been the video for today, talking about the best Fullmetal Alchemist fights. Hope you all enjoyed this one, as I had a lot of fun recording and making it. Leave a like, comment down your thoughts. You know, if you agree with my list, you have a different list. Either way, I'm really excited to hear everyone's input. Share this video with your friends if you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you all later. Ninja, peace everybody, and have a good day.